Hello and welcome back to the Fight and Talk 2 channel with myself, Mr. Fight and Talk, joined as always by the fantastic co-host of the show. Welcome back, George. How we doing in Casual Corner? Nice to see you, man.
All good, mate. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well.
Good.
And at the bottom of the screen, we have the original eloquent analyst, Prash. How we doing?
Oh, thank you very much. I love it. Yes, thanks. Thank you for having me. No, been keeping up with the channel. Love what you guys have been doing, and pleasure to come in and have a good chat with everyone.
No drama, man. Thank you very much. And I said the original eloquent analyst because, as you may know,
I love that.
These two gentlemen look very, very much alike, and MMA runs in their blood. So, you know, the eloquent analyst number 2 now, I'm afraid you're going to have to be, or 2.0. I don't know how we can make that up.
I'll take it.
We've got Prath as well. How we doing, man?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Just crazy work week, but getting through it.
That's it. And it's only Tuesday. How is it only Tuesday? I don't understand. I think when you're looking forward to something, the days just go really slow. And this weekend, we have got a huge main card. The prelims are a little bit shallow for me, but we can get into a few fights that a couple of people are looking forward to anyway. But the main card is absolutely stacked for 261. So, seeing as you're new to the show, Prash, tell me, what are you looking forward to on this card with the prelims?
Well, with the prelims, I went for Roberson and Allen. You've got a middleweight division that's got a lot of attention at the moment. You know, you've got Marvin Vettori the other day sitting by ringside as Whittaker put on an absolute masterclass, like blown away. Just have to reiterate again, I know you guys did a great breakdown of it, but wow, it was amazing, masterful performance against Gastelum, who's so underrated in every way. People don't give him enough credit how tough he is. And, you know, Whittaker stayed in there. He kind of outdone him there on the feet, was really good with his footwork. And he just kind of showed that since his loss to Adesanya, I just kind of feel like he's been adding those tools that he needs to go and kind of take him back on. And then you look at Roberson and Allen. These guys are not in the top 15, but I think that kind of division is open. There's loads of new contenders emerging. Roberson, I know he's a kickboxer, quite skilled, but has shown lots of deficiencies in terms of being on the ground. Like his 3 losses, I believe, are all submission losses to really good people like Cesar Ferraro, who won Tough Brazil, if I'm not mistaken, Pradeep will know. And I think Glover Teixeira as well, even though that was a light heavyweight. And I think, first of all, he's shown a little bit of difficulty moving into middleweight because he's a bit of a big middleweight, and he cuts down. He missed weight against Vettori and went on to lose that fight. And then you've got Allen coming in. Allen was on an 7 or 8 fight win streak going in. He lost to Sean Strickland, who he was really great, came back from, you know, a really long layoff, but always a really talented fighter. So no shame in that loss. And I think this is a really good opportunity for Allen to get back on the march. It's his fight to really lose because he's a more well-rounded fighter than Roberson. I think his jiu-jitsu is really good. He's got submission wins. He's got, you know, knockouts on the feet. And I think if you put the two together, he would seem to have the edge in that one. So for me, I think he can go in, put a win in there, and then maybe get someone just outside the top 15 and start making his way up.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And I love how MMA fans, we always look at how they got finished or how they've had these losses as well. It's not like in boxing when it doesn't really matter. They've got a loss, you know, but looking into how they've been beaten. And then, you know, sometimes it's for betting reasons or, you know, who to pick the favorite and that kind of stuff. But if you think they're going to losing 3 times by submission, you'd assume that the game plan for the other guy would be, I'm going to go in there and take him straight to the ground, right? But it doesn't always work like that, does it? We never, you know, sometimes we just don't see it. You see 2 wrestlers, you think they're going to wrestle, they try and stand and bang. I just don't understand. But Prath, what are you looking forward to on the prelims then? Because I know you're a fan of the Cowboy, not the original Cowboy, but the other one. You know, tell me, what are you looking forward to with that bout?
Yeah, Brazilian Cowboy Alex Oliveira versus Randy Brown. I actually really like Randy Brown as well. Randy Rude Boy Brown representing Jamaica and America. Alex Oliveira out of Brazil. Both coming off of losses against very key fighters. Alex Oliveira to probably one of George's favorite fighters, Shavkat Rakhmonov. Who I know George absolutely loves him. Randy Brown losing to Vicente Luque. So obviously, you know, top of the top when it comes to the welterweight division. So It's going to be a tough fight. They're both game as hell. They both come forward. They're both great everywhere, standing and on the ground. Great takedowns, great takedown defense. So I'm expecting to see a war on the feet here. And Alex Oliveira is kind of known for those crazy ass wars where he's in close against the cage, elbows and knees and things of this nature. So it's going to be a great fight, a very close fight, and I think that's going to really, give them a massive edge in this welterweight division. I have high hopes for Randy Brown. I think he is a very underrated fighter. He's got a lot of great, unique submissions like anaconda chokes and things like that I think are very apropos for him because he's a very lanky individual, very long arms. Kind of like that Anderson Silva build, very, very skinny and tall and long and rangy. Just want to see him use a little bit more of that going forward. So yeah, I think it's going to be a fantastic fight, man. I'm really, really looking forward to that one. That's kind of my big fight of the night, obviously outside of the main card, but the main card is going to be incredible.
Now, I see Cowboy a lot, and I feel like we see him quite frequently as well. But is he falling into this kind of journeyman kind of pitch? Is he falling into the journeyman category? Do you think with the amount of wins and losses he has, or do you think he's a real contender in that division?
I mean, he's fighting tough guys, man. He's fighting, Gunnar Nelson, Mike Perry before Mike Perry went crazy. Yancy Medeiros. These are all top guys, man. So I think while it's going to be hard for him to get on a run, and this seems to be his kind of problem here, is he wins one or two fights and then he goes on a losing streak, and then he goes on a winning streak, and then he loses a couple and he wins a couple. So in that sense, I don't believe he has like a title run in him, if I'm going to be completely honest. But I think he is going to be, again, like, and I hate to say this in a way as well, he's going to kind of turn into that smiling Sam Alvey, still quite tough, but like, that's like what's going to propel you into those bigger fights.
Yeah, I'm with you. And just on the topic of journeymen, we've obviously got Anthony Smith versus Jimmy Crute on this card as well. And Anthony Smith is, in my opinion, a couple of years ago, we were looking at him and going, wow, this guy is going to make some serious noise. He's coming through. He's beating people here. And then all of a sudden he's holding his teeth and handing them to the referee. And that is the start of his demise. But George, obviously Jimmy Crute is going to be in Crush Corner this week, isn't he? Because he's an attractive young man. He's about the same age as you. I'm sure you'd love to have a slice of his pie. But what do you like about that fight? And do you think this is a stepping stone for Jimmy Crute to kind of propel off of the Anthony Smith name? Because I believe Smith is on a pretty hard skid with his losses recently, right?
Yeah, I think I've been through this last couple of days, and I think this is now getting close to being what you would class as a layup fight for Jimmy Crute. It's quite a good layup fight, though, because I think Anthony Smith's like ranked 6 or 7 in the world. So, win against him and you're right in the mix at light heavyweight all of a sudden. So, I mean, obviously he was originally meant to be fighting Johnny Walker, but Johnny Walker pulled out because he knows how good Jimmy Crute is. And Johnny Walker is a bit of a nomadic, like, he just moves around and he just doesn't really, you don't know what you're going to get from Johnny Walker every single time he fights. But yeah, Anthony Smith, I think his record's like 34-16. So I might be able to say, I think it's something crazy like that.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
So he's been around and he's had a lot of fights. I mean, Jimmy Crute, I think last year got named in the top 20. It was number 1 in the top 25 young prospects in mixed martial arts. And I just feel like at 12-1, I think he is now. It seemed like the right time to throw him in there with like an Anthony Smith, that kind of guy, and just to see where he really is at. I think before 259, I was saying that if Izzy became light heavyweight champion, that somewhere further down the line, potentially a Izzy, Jimmy Crute, Australasia kind of super fight at kind of light heavyweight was a definite possibility. But yeah, he's certainly someone to keep an eye on. He's part of that kind of murderer's row of young talent, Ankalaev, Prochaska, himself is included in that kind of group. So I'm expecting Jimmy Crute to put on a pretty spectacular performance. I think it's one definitely out of the main card. It's kind of the one that's going unnoticed a little bit, obviously for obvious reasons. There's 3 title fights on this card. But Jimmy Crute is definitely someone to keep an eye on over the next couple of years. I think he's my age, 24, 25, and he's a serious talent for the UFC. And I'm expecting big things in the next couple of years for Jimmy Crute. And Anthony Smith is a start of that kind of run, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I'm with you. Prash, Jimmy Crute, if he gets the win at the weekend, who do you see him facing in the top 5? Because he's going to be slowly making his way towards title contention. Who in the top 5 do you think he's got a chance of even getting booked with and a chance of beating? Because I feel like the 205 since the stepping down of Johnny Bones Jones, this division has just blown up. There's so many more names in there. But who do you think Jimmy Crute can bounce onto next if he gets the win and beats Anthony Smith at the weekend?
I mean, it's tough, because we had a long period where it was the aging division. It was kind of like John Jones had cleaned out the division, and everyone outside of him just looked super old, outdated. And then obviously, you've got these new contenders emerging, and now these old guys are becoming the stepping stones. Except for obviously Teixeira now stepping up for his one shot left. Was it 8 Mile song or whatever you want to call it? Just that it's time to go, baby. If you don't step up, get out of the way. It's done. Retire. It's finished. It's over. Because when he wins that title, you just want him to retire on the top.
Yes.
You don't want him to get beaten down by the next person that comes along. As for Crute, I don't know. Who's not matched up? Reyes is matched up now, isn't he?
Yep, he'll be fighting the week after next, I believe.
Right, against Jiri Prakash.
Yep.
And you don't want any of these new prospects to really go. Yeah, I know. And you don't want any of these young prospects to go against each other. You want to kind of feed them one of the other old guys, really, don't you? Because the new talent, we want to keep them preserved. Because I mean, I don't know about you and me, but Blachowicz doesn't. He can get 2 or 3 easy-ish defenses, sneak a little rain in, but then one of the young guys is going to get up and take him over because he's a pretty beatable champion. All respect to the guy, but he's on the tail end of his career now. So I don't know. I think, depending on how the other fights are currently going, one of these kind of top contenders, maybe if Reyes loses, how far is the Reyes match away? Like it's soon, right?
The week after, I believe, or 2 weeks.
Right. Yeah. So depending on who wins and loses that match, maybe he takes the winner or loser of that,
Yeah.
And they can go up for a number 1 contendership.
He'll be fighting Reyes.
Fighting Reyes. I was the loser. Yeah. Because Petraska's crazy. Or another. He's crazy. Or Alexander Rakic as well. I know he's coming off of a win. That might be a cool one to match him up against. And I know Alexander Rakic has a lot to prove after that last fight. I'm sure he wants to get a win and a finish under his belt before going up for that kind of title fight. So
it was a bit of a lukewarm performance last time out, wasn't it?
Thiago Santos,
exactly.
I believe it was.
Yeah. Santos is out there too.
Where's Ankalaev is 7.
So maybe Santos.
That would be a good fight,
Santos is there. Santos would be a good shout.
Yeah,
that
Santos
would really be a big statement considering he went really close with Bones. So
yeah,
definitely. But with Santos's knees as well, obviously we saw that when he was fighting last time out, he was just very, very gun shy. He's obviously on the back end of his career as well. And like you said, some of the, kind of 50% of that division at the moment is very, very tail end of their career and kind of want them to really retire very, very soon. And another guy I want to retire is Chris Weidman, because I've never liked this guy. I just don't know why. Right? I had a Twitter altercation with him like last year. And
no way.
Yeah, so on my own personal Twitter, and so he said something, and then I kind of I was semi-trolling him, I guess, and then he kind of trolled me back, and then I had so much hate on my my notifications from Weidman fanboys. So I don't know if that's why I don't like him, or the fact that he's not very good, and I want him to retire. But his last couple of performances have just been real stinkers for me. I feel like with a record of 15-5. And I believe he's a former champion as well. And I feel like everyone knows him, but with a record like that, you'd think he'd be better than he is. Prath, where do you see him go? How do you see this fight with Uriah Hall? Because Uriah Hall hasn't got the best record in the world, but neither has Weidman. Weidman looked like he gassed out very, very hard. I cannot remember the gentleman's name that he gassed out against. A big
Akhmedov.
Who was it?
Amari Akhmedov.
Exactly. They fought, and the third round was just the two of them laying on each other, and it was like they would. I don't know. It's like their legs stopped working, and they were fighting over a donut or something. It was just boring. I got no time for that, especially with someone with such a credible background. But Prath, how do you see this fight playing out? Because Uriah Hall has been He's one of these guys, you know. It seems to be all the way up the card. You have a really good fighter, and then you have someone that's kind of like, okay, wins, losses, etc. Until we get to the top three, obviously. But how do you see this playing out of the weekend with Uriah Hall and Chris Weidman?
The rematch between Chris Weidman and Uriah Hall from 11 years later, from Ring of Combat. I don't think anyone gives a shit about that, but
we've all been waiting for this rematch.
We've all been waiting for this one. Uriah Hall, I don't even know where to begin with this, man. The Chris, I used to have so much love for the Chris, and back in like 2014, 2015, Chris was the guy, man, at middleweight. Even when he went up against Luke Rockhold, I thought that he was doing a pretty good job against Luke Rockhold until he threw that spinning kick and ultimately ended up getting finished. And then from there, he to his credit, he has taken only killer fights. You know, Luke Rockhold, Yoel Romero, Gegard Mousasi, Kelvin Gastelum, Jacare, Dominic Reyes. Like those are his last like fights, apart from. And again, that's kind of a mixture of losses and mostly losses and one win, and and then his decision win against Amari Akhmedov as well. Man, I don't know. I think, you know, everyone says about you need to get back on the horse and you have to get your steam back. And I'm hoping that he had his great, you know, not I wouldn't say great performance. He had his performance against Amari Akhmedov and managed to get through that fight, managed to get a win in his back pocket. And I'm hoping that this will give him the confidence to kind of return to the Chris Weidman that we used to see. I don't know if that will be something that's ever possible ever again, but I know everyone is kind of on the same wavelength here. Do you know what? I will say this. Okay, put Chris Weidman to the side for 1 second. Uriah Hall looked great in his last fight against Anderson Silva. You know, regardless of Anderson Silva's age and things like that, like, you know, Uriah Hall in and of himself had a great performance against Anderson Silva. So I'm hoping that I can't remember if he's changed teams. I know he's had the same striking coach as Chael Sonnen for a very, very long time. He's been using him. I can't remember that fella's name as well, but I believe he's kind of moved around from camp to camp, and I'm thinking now he's found his team, and I believe he could be with Ruka, California. I could be going crazy here, but that seems like it's in that same wavelength there. But yeah, two kind of classic fighters. Uriah Hall, obviously very much famous for the crazy spinning back kick on The Ultimate Fighter back in the day. But just never really managed to kind of translate that to the octagon. And, you know, he was a killer on that series, and like everyone was afraid of him. And then just for some reason, I believe it might have been Kelvin Gastelum who beat him in the finale. I know they were great friends, and then he kind of like was apologetic and things like that. And that just kind of seems to be the trend of Uriah Hall's career since then. Like, seems to be very caring about his opponents and things like that, and maybe not having that killer mentality. But I'm hoping now that he's kind of recovered that a little bit, maybe a little bit too late in his career. But if he's recovered even a little bit of that, Chris Weidman's in trouble here. And he's going to be fighting someone that is throwing dangerous techniques, throwing spinning kicks. Chris Weidman's got a great ground game, regardless of, you know, I think his stand-up is obviously pretty like 50-50, and that's what's allowed him to take a lot of these shots and get finished most of the time. Finished against Jacare, finished against Yoel Romero, finished against Luke Rockhold. Like, he's open to strikes. And if Uriah Hall throws a spinning kick and he's open, he's going to hit him and he's going to put him down. Do I think that happens? I probably don't. I think that Uriah Hall will probably get a decision here. After a tough fight, I think it's going to be, you know, just a tough, you know, grinding fight between the both of them. But I kind of see Uriah Hall being able to get on top here.
Yeah, I'm with you. Prash, what do you think while we're on the topic of gentlemen?
Well, first of all,
big Chris fan.
No, listen, I wouldn't say I was a Chris fan. I was a fan of the change in the division when Chris won, because it was just a fresh breath of air. And then I think he took out Machida after, and it was like, okay, you know, everybody aboard the train. The problem with Chris Weidman is that he hasn't really evolved. So, you know, his wrestling's always been pretty good and rudimentary and standard, but his striking hasn't really got that variety in terms of the combinations and stuff. And you can see it. You can see that if Uriah Hall pulls out a flying knee that we know he could probably he's got it in his locker, you can see Chris getting knocked out by that, because that's what happened with all of his he's been knocked out spectacularly a few times now. So if anyone's prone to have it to them, well, there you go. Yeah, that it's going to be him. The only problem is really, I don't think either fighter is going to do much further in the division. So it's sort of at that stage where I don't see Uriah going to the top 5. I can't really see him beating anyone, because he still hasn't ever put it all together, which is a real shame, because when he has, fantastic, and he's, you know, his striking is so diverse and beautiful. But yeah, it's a bit of a shame. But hopefully this puts the old dog out in terms of Chris, and we can move on. You know, it's the changing of the guard all over the UFC at the moment. So I can see Chris ending up in Bellator within the next year, sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. And it's funny because they're both actually the same age. They're both 36. And
crazy.
It's mad that we see Chris Weidman as an older fighter. And picked on something exactly what I wanted to speak about, which is the evolution of fighters as well. You know, we see so many fighters come through the UFC that have been there, you know, long-standing kind of fighters throughout the decades, and they kind of don't evolve. They don't change time through time. Benavidez is a perfect example. We still see him fighting the same way he did 5-6 years ago, and you think, you know, fighters they've got so much better nowadays. You know, Chris Weidman, prime example. And then next up on the card, we've obviously got Valentina Shevchenko, who has been a champion for a very long time, and she has evolved constantly, year on year on year. Whoever she fights, she evolves and she gets better and better and better. George, we've got the Bullet fighting at the weekend. I know you're a big Bullet fan. So tell me, how does she go this weekend against a lady that used to be in a lighter division? She's come up. She's very short. She's very stocky. She's got a lot of power in her punches. Do you think the Bullet can overcome this weekend? Because arguably she is the second greatest female fighter of all time, right?
Yeah, 100%. She's definitely in the top two. 100%. With her and Amanda Nunes. So, yeah, no, I get the fight. I understand the fight. I think that, like you just said, Andrade has got stocky power to her. Could be a problem. The biggest problem for Shevchenko is if it goes to the ground, but that could be a problem. We don't really know too much about what happens like when she gets to the floor. That would be probably a tactic from Andrade, but I just see this being a pretty simple 25 minutes, to be honest, for Shevchenko. It wouldn't surprise me either if Shevchenko finished Andrade, to be honest. I just think that her kickboxing is too elite for Andrade, and it's just going to prove to be way too much. You know, I think about this all the time. I kind of have this. She's not Andrade is not Megan Anderson, like, but I have the same kind of feeling about it. I just have the feeling that this is just going to be like routine. Like we're going to sit here on Sunday and go, that was pretty simple for Valentina. And I don't really know where Valentina goes, because it's a bit like Nunes. Where does she go? Like, Nunes has just been booked against Pena. It's like, why? Like, what's the point? Like, I suppose she's got to fight somebody, but Pena's not going to beat Nunes. It's like, so where do you find these two individuals that kind of fight that they really challenge themselves? I mean, obviously, some people will argue that it's against each other. You know, I think that perhaps Wei Li going up potentially might cause Shevchenko some problems, maybe. But yeah, for me personally this weekend, without like divulging it for ages and ages, I just think Valentina gets it done. I think it's really quite simple to predict this one. I think the other two are harder to pick actually than this one. I think this was the simplest one of the night.
Prath, you seem to be nodding down there. Do you think it's going to be a Valentina bloodbath? She's going to have a lovely little dance afterwards and it's all going to be fun and games? Or because last time out when we saw her, I cannot remember the lady's name, but she did actually lose a round, I believe. She lost a round. She lost a round on the ground, which we are very, very, you know, the odds, I saw like the live betting, the odds went completely the other way for some reason. And I believe Valentina Shevchenko was like a minus 1,300 favorite. It's just, there's no reason to ever bet against her because you're going to lose your money. But Andrade is a very good fighter. We've seen her knock people out. We've seen her sub people. We've seen, a whole vast array of her skills. But do you think she's going to be able to implement any of her game plan against the all-round package that is Valentina Shevchenko?
I mean, the way I kind of think of it is it's kind of like it could end up like the Rose fight, right? Where she kind of like clinches up against the fence and like wins by like slam knockout. Something weird like that could happen on like a very, very slim chance. But then you watch the second fight and Rose just absolutely tore up Andrade. And so that's what you'd kind of end up seeing in the second fight if that crazy scenario ever played out. But let's not hope that happens. Valentina is the second greatest women's fighter of all time, alongside Nunes. Like everything about her technique, aggression, even her ground game is great. Like she submitted Juliana Pena, who's fighting Nunes. Like that's a very, very accomplished BJJ competitor to get a win over by a submission as well. So even on the ground, she is incredible as well. So man, it's going to be a very tall order for I think it's going to be a very tall order for any flyweight or strawweight to take any kind of, for Valentina to do anything against Valentina. They're just going to need to get someone who's huge at 135 that cuts down to 125 and that can just like wrestle fuck her against the cage. Like that's going to be the only way to take the fucking title off of Valentina as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, because when it comes to striking, like Jessica Andrade better be she better be dropping her levels like crazy, because the head kicks that are going to come out of Valentina Shevchenko are going to be fast and furious. And that's kind of how I see this going. She's a shorter fighter. She's a stockier fighter. Jessica Andrade has crazy knockout power. You see her knock out Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Like that was one of the most like surreal things to see, like a woman get flatline like that by another woman. That's not something you see too often, apart from in Nunes fights or Cyborg fights, who are, they're giant women. So, Jessica Andrade has kind of also been flitting across divisions. She was a bantamweight fighter, she's a flyweight fighter, she was the strawweight champion. So this is a woman that has kind of carried on, kind of redefining her career, and here she is going for another title fight. Like, to her credit, she got the win that she needed to have in that division and was able to challenge Valentina, which is great. So I think she's probably going to get head kicked, if I'm going to be honest. But if she can hold her up against the cage and slam her on her head, she's got a good chance there, man. That's about it, though.
If Mark Smith is reffing, we spoke about this.
Mark Smith, yeah. That's what you mean. Mark Smith.
We know it's going to go
every
wrong.
Single time.
Something's happening. One of them's going to get a groin strike or get
eye poke,
in the womb. I don't know what's going to go on, but something's going to go wrong in that fight if Mark Smith is there. Prash, obviously, Valentina is a fantastic fighter, and we've seen a couple of her losses. They came against Amanda Nunes, who is, she's my GOAT. Basically, I've got a lot of respect for this woman. But do you think there will come a point where they'll have to have the trilogy? Although Nunes obviously has 2 wins over Valentina already, do you think they need to fight a third time to kind of have that "I'm the best female of all time, don't come at me" kind of thing?
I think, just purely for public demand, considering both of them are so short of competition in the divisions, that's an inevitable fact. Now, look, I just think that there's something to be said about competition. Like, her last outing was arguably her kind of worst one that we've seen as a champion, because she lost a round. But like, who's getting motivated against Jennifer Maia? Like, she didn't give a toss and she still won, right? But now you've got an actual challenge. Like, Andrade, she's a beast. She could knock you out. And that's something that I think that will make her step up to the plate. And we'll obviously her best performance today, because that's an actual challenge, someone who's been a champion in our division, that everyone is sort of rooting to beat her. And she's fully aware of that. But her skills are so she's a consummate champion as well. That's the thing with her. We're all sitting here and we're like, well, she's going to win. It's the obvious pick. And there's a reason for that, because every time she goes in there, she knows how to get it done, apart from against Nunes, which arguably you could say one of the 2 fights kind of went her way and she was unlucky on the decision. It wasn't a robbery, but it was close. So, for me, I'm a huge fan of the Bullet. And I just think that we'll see her best performance today when she gets in there. And when she does, she's going to be like either Zhang Weili, Nunes, whoever's running away from me, give me the money, let's go. Like, because what other option is there at this point for her?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's so it's not sad, but it's strange to see so many of the other divisions, the men's divisions, for instance, flourishing. You were talking about the middleweight division, people being on the fringe of the 10 to 15, the 20 mark, and there's so many new people coming in. The light heavyweight division, there's loads of new up and comers coming through, making loads of noise. But I feel like whenever we watch these women, the female fights, they're kind of, even if they're not ranked yet or they're 13, 12, etc., none of them compare to Amanda Nunes or Valentina Shevchenko. Me and Prath, when we were watching the fights the other day, there was a female fighter on there and we went, she's good, but if she was against Valentina, what would happen? And you think, yeah, fair enough. And she is the benchmark for the female fighters, I feel.
Well, what's going to happen here is similar to the Rousey effect, which is that when Rousey was the champion, they started becoming all these female fighters, joining the sport, getting interested in MMA, and a lot of gyms building a female to try and beat Rousey. Now what's going to happen is there's going to be a couple of more years of dominance between Shevchenko and Nunes, and there's going to be a bunch of new fights coming. I mean, we've already started seeing loads of Brazilian women, for example, joining the UFC, going pretty high up the ranks really quickly. And I think that you know, a few more years, the academies that are opening up in China and Mexico and everywhere else, we're going to see some new emerging talent here, and they're going to be all built to beat these two women. So it's a matter of time and patience, I think.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Alexa
Especially
Grasso,
China.
Macy Barber, these kind of like true up and comers that they are making a lot of noise, but
yeah, and those
young.
kids are only 20 years old, and so kind of like what we were at 2021, and it's like what we were saying about Jimmy Crute earlier, which is that we're really enjoying seeing these new contenders emerge, but they need to be built in the right way. And I think the UFC just always makes the mistake of rushing them in against someone too high up the rungs, and then they get knocked back, the confidence gets knocked back, and then look where we're at, and we're lacking contenders. So, you know, if the UFC have got so many fighters, build them a little slower. No one's gonna rush you in that regard, and then we can finally see within a few years of the right sort of experiences, let them beat a few veterans, because there are loads of veterans that are pretty beatable in the women's division that are hanging around with really bad records. We can build them against those, and then eventually we can get there. So,
yeah, no, absolutely, I completely agree. You know, we have George loves Manel Cape, and you know, the guy just gets put up against absolute murderers for some reason.
Poor guy.
And it's like you bring a guy over into the UFC, and then he just loses, and it's like with Paddy the Baddie coming over to the UFC as well.
Oh, he is going to get melted, let's be honest.
But it would be great to see him against people outside of the top 15 where he should be fighting and, you know, built up nice and slowly in the organization instead of going, oh, right, you're in Cage Warriors. Sweet. Dan Hardy was in Cage Warriors. So was Conor McGregor. You know, let's put him in against a top set, like a number 7 or something.
Put him in against Yair Rodriguez.
Yeah.
The thing is, right, quickly, I agree with you all about Paddy Pimblett, but because Paddy Pimblett's the talker and he gives it the big massive, he'll find himself in big fights. That's just how the UFC works. Because he talks shit all the time, you know he'll get big fights. That's just the way it is.
But they'll just feed him a Russian, and then you know what's going to happen. He's going to be
absolutely
ground through the cage. So we'll wait for that day. But until then, let's bet on him for the favourable matches.
But it's one of them things you don't want to see him lose, because, you know, he's got a good talk and he's got a good attitude, and he's very marketable for the UK as well, with like how he is as a person and his like big floppy hair and stuff. But there's a couple of fighters at the weekend. Obviously, we're moving slowly up the card as we segue into different bits and pieces. The next fight up the card is obviously Rose Namajunas versus Zhang Weili. Sorry, and I love both of these women. I don't care who anyone is. I want both of these women to not touch each other at all. 25 minutes, just look at each other and dance a little bit, call it a draw, and we can all just leave happy. You know, these are two of my favorite female fighters and two of my favorite fighters in general. Thug Rose, just because she's beautiful, man. She's just such a lovely looking lady, and she is a killer. To shave your head because you are a fighter, you know, she works the ball look. We love it anyway. We've spoken about it before, but so many women, they have these long curls, long hairs, and they try and tie it all up, and it gets fluffy and it goes everywhere. Clay Guida, we always talk about, you know, he's got hair everywhere. And she's shaved her head because she's that deep into the sport. And I love that stuff, you know. And then Zhang Weili, you know, her post-fight interview and post-fight, all that kind of stuff, when she got the title last year, was just heart-wrenching. You know, I was like, wow, this woman she's so passionate about what she does, and she's so passionate about representing her country and all that kind of stuff. It's just beautiful to see. But George, who do you have with these two women? I've been umming and ahhing. I don't want either of them to lose in spectacular fashion. I want it to be an extremely close split decision, and I want everyone to be really annoyed that one of them didn't win, and we just see a couple of rematches that float through. But who do you think takes it, and how?
I said this to you a couple of weeks ago. I was really struggling with this one. This is the one. This is the fight you cannot miss, I think, on this card. This is definitely the one. I did go with Rose. I think Rose is going to win. And I only think that because if she's able to survive what I kind of view where he's like the kind of like brawler like chaos that she kind of brings, she is way more technical, and I think she's more clever than Weili. And I think we all know how much I love Trevor Whitman and the kind of game plans that he's able to come up with. I just think that a combination of her technical ability and Trevor Whitman's game plan, I think, is the combination that is going to be required to beat who is at the moment looks quite a dominating champion, but I think Weili's beatable. The one thing I would say is though that I don't think if it gets into a bit of a brawl that Namajunas will last, because I mean, Joanna's got one hell of a chin on her, and Namajunas doesn't have that good a chin. And I think if it gets a bit like that, then Namajunas could find herself in some trouble potentially. But I do think that the technical kind of level of Namajunas is the reason why I've had to just go edge towards her ever so slightly. But I will not be surprised one bit if Weili's still a champion on Sunday morning. It would not be a shocking thing whatsoever. The only thing I wanted to say on it was that this week there's been a bit of tension between the two of them, you know, with this comment about the communism and all this kind of stuff. And I just think it's a slightly strange stance for Rose to take. I understand her point, like obviously coming from Lithuania and the communism and all this kind of stuff, I get it. But Weili's never given her political view. She's never stated how she, like, how she views the Chinese government. And to kind of bring it in seemed pretty pointless, to be honest. It's almost, I felt it was just to concentrate on the fight and let's get on with it. I think it's an added extra that Fug didn't need to bring into it, to be honest. So, but yeah, despite that, I still think she'll win. I think a combination of her and Trevor Whitman is the combination to beat Weili and to announce herself again as the strawweight champion.
Yeah, no, I like it. And it's going to be a tough fight for both of these ladies, you know, and they are at the very, very top of the division as well. And I can really see over the next 6 to 12, 18 months that you'll just have these same kind of 3-4 people fighting each other. Prath, you're looking a little bit confused there. I think you've just brought up what Rose Namajunas said about the Weili Zhang communism thing, right? So what was that about? Because George didn't fill us in there, but you've got it all in front of you. Hit me with it.
Yeah, I must have missed this week. I've been crazy busy with work, but
George is on it. He's on it every day. I don't know what he does.
My guy.
He don't even work.
Yeah, constantly. I knew it before it came out.
He's got a man on the inside.
Yeah. So apparently she went on an Ariel show and she was talking about my opinions are based on my experience. It's sort of something I looked up on YouTube. This is an actual reference to a documentary. If you're confused about any of my opinions, you can watch the documentary and you can get a good idea of what my family had to go through, the reason I'm in the United States today, and the reason I do martial arts and all that stuff. And it's around a documentary that's kind of showing Lithuanians that struggled against with communist oppression, and that being a driving factor in this fight for her, which I think is incredibly bizarre because, you know, political history, a fight with a person, you know, these feel like two completely different things here. So really interesting for her to bring it up. But yeah, sorry, George.
I just think as well, it's always quite a dangerous game when you mix politics and sport in the kind of same thing, especially when you're leading up to a fight. And to make a very controversial comment, which was, I think, better dead than red. I don't know if it's the right way to play it going into a huge fight. I mean, one of the biggest strawweight fights we've seen in recent times. I just don't know whether this is, I don't know whether it's the right thing from Rose. But building up to that, I was pretty sure. And you don't know what this is going to give Weili. This could give Weili the kind of rocket up, you know, that she needs to kind of go, you know what, fuck this. I'm not having this. So yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you guys have been watching Embedded, but Weili's striking just looks insane. Like she's got tree trunks for legs, and every time she snaps a kick, I can feel it through the screen against my face, and it hurts. So you know, I don't know if she needs a lot of encouragement here to be throwing some crazy strikes at this gal, but I mean, that's a pretty good driving factor to be like, what the actual F are you talking about? And I'm just going to go and smash you. Oh, man, I'm torn as well, man. Both as the same as both of you guys said, like two of my favorite fighters. And I remember like when we were talking about getting the podcast together today, like that's the one thing that kept going through my mind is like, I have to actually pick someone in this fight because this is the craziest fight. Two of my favorite fighters. I love Weili's style. You know, she's strong, great striking, great combinations. Rose, way more technical, great jiu-jitsu as well. Like, God, what a crazy good fight. And again, like same as Connor, which is I just want to see a great fight between the two of them. And regardless of what happens, I really don't want to see rematches because I love both of these guys. But you know, for the meritocracy of championship divisional crap, then we'll go with it because they are the two best in my opinion, along with Joanna right at the top. the triangle, the strawweight triangle right at the top, that would just seem to be a revolving door of those three fighting in different iterations. Because I just think like they technique wise, aggression wise, all the things you look for in a hallmark UFC fighter, like those three have it, and the other guys are catching up. And that's kind of what you see in Valentina, and the flyweights are catching up. That's what you see in Nunes, and the bantamweights are catching up, and she has it. So I think it's going to be a very, very tight fight. I think Rose has a good chance of potentially submitting her. We haven't seen too much of Weili's ground game in the respect of defending chokes and submissions and things of that nature. You've seen her kind of grind takedowns and things of like grind takedowns against like Tisha Torres and people like that. But you haven't seen I wouldn't say too much of her ground game comparatively to someone like Rose, who's kind of one of her main bows of her strings, if you will. So I'm looking forward to maybe seeing some of that being exposed in the fight. I think that these two are just going to want to stand and fight for the first round, maybe 2 rounds. And then I think once they kind of get a feel for each other, then we'll start seeing the different paths that these guys take. And I'm interested to see who can implement their game, because Weili, being as strong as she is, she might be able to dictate being able to stand on the feet and not wanting to go to the ground with Rose. And purely based off of the, like, kind of like the way I kind of think of it is, you know, like Dustin Poirier versus Max Holloway, right? I think that Weili is gonna, every time Weili is gonna hit Rose, it's gonna do some damage, or it's gonna at least make the crowd go, oh my god. And then, you know, if Rose is able to hang on, and that's where we can see a little bit more of, you know, a tired Weili. But she didn't seem to tire at all against Joanna. I don't know if I really saw that. She seemed like she can go for another 25 round, to be fair. Man, I love this fight so much. I kind of want to sit on the fence, but I know you guys won't let me sit on the fence. So I'm going to go, I'm going to go with Namajunas by submission.
Nice. I like it. Do you think...
Just one thing as well, quickly, is Namajunas said that she was going to finish Weili by submission. And Weili's been saying that she enjoys finishing people by their like how they enjoy finishing people. And so Weili's suggesting that she's going to finish Namajunas by submitting her, which would be mental.
Mental.
We just don't know. But the experience that Zhang has over Rose as well, obviously, I think she's got like double the amount of fights that might come into play, because obviously, you know, Rose Namajunas is only 28. She's still very, very young in her career. Both these ladies are. Now, Prash, I wanted to ask a little bit of a topical question here, because we always talk about, like, you know, racism and political views on this show anyway, as you know, but you've been watching MMA for a very long time. Do you think nowadays people kind of bring these things into the fights to more than they ever used to? And also more because, one, it's on social media, it can cause a stir and it brings more attention to the fights, and to also get into the fighters' heads. You know, we've seen Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor do it over the past couple of weeks with their Twitter beef. We've seen, again, Conor McGregor doing it with his kind of slandering of the Islam community and stuff in his Habib fight. But what's your view on kind of bringing these views into the fight? Because at the end of the day, once the octagon door closes, there's just two people in there that want to kill each other, essentially, and they're gladiators, you know. But why do they do this? Tell me what's your take on it.
Well, look, I'll agree with George in terms of, I don't like seeing politics mixing up with it unless it's Kamaru knocking out Colby's jaw. Like, I'm happy to see that all day long. No, that's the kind of politics I love to see. Beyond that, of course, we don't really like to see it getting involved, because I think that fighters are fighters, and unfortunately, a lot of them can't really eloquently explain their views. And I feel like a lot of their opinions get reduced because of the kind of job that they do. And I think sometimes, especially as the sport is still growing into a professional sport, a lot of people still don't give it the recognition that it deserves in those kind of arenas. Still not allowed in a lot of countries. You know, I think we need to sort of tidy it up in a way. We love tension. Tension can be, you know, taking the mick out of each other and other things, but I think the politics side just gets really ugly. You know, if anyone knows about communism, and as Rose purports that she does, then you should know that if someone's under a communist dictatorship, they can't express their opinions. So you saying to everyone that, oh, Weili, you know, communist, whatever, she supports government. Well, if she didn't, she couldn't say it anyway. So why bring it up? What's the need? She's just as much a victim of oppression and communism as you are. So, you know, that's where you see the fact that as much as I understand that she's probably very emotional about it. Myself and Pradeep, you know, we come from Sri Lanka. There's been hundreds of years of political unrest and all sorts of terrible things there. But if you really, really don't know what you're talking about, it's better to keep your mouth shut on those issues. Keep it separate from the fight. Do a podcast about your experiences and everything you've done. But when it comes to the fight, let's just keep it about the fight.
Absolutely, man. I completely agree. I completely agree. And it's not rare that we see this, but I feel like we're seeing it more nowadays. I don't know why that is. You know, is it because it's on social media, for instance, or, you know, she knows that when she goes on the Ariel Helwani show that it's going to be put out to millions of people are going to see this. You know, if we were to see a professional footballer have the same conversation on a, you know, whatever podcast it may be, they'd be reprimanded for their comments, right? They'd have some sort of, you know, slap on the wrist or something would happen. But why don't we see that in MMA? Why don't we see people get kind of reprimanded for the comments they're making on very, very touchy, kind of very, very sensitive topics?
If you reprimanded everyone in the MMA or the UFC for controversial comments, there'd be no athletes left, mate. Like, look, just take Dana on his own and what he says about female journalists and, you know, bloody everyone, literally. Like Dana himself, you'd have to take him out, and, you know, he's in the high position. He's recognized, really. You know, people don't even call it MMA these days. They call it UFC, especially the casuals that don't really watch it. So the sport is so broad, and yet at the same time, you know, those of us who watch it so regularly know that it breaks down into so many organizations, so many personalities. Like, that's what I love Scott Coker. Like, for me, Scott Coker does the perfect job. You know, he just sits, talks about his fighters, lets the quality of the fights and everything do the talking. Now, you know, granted, he's not got anywhere as close as good fighters compared to the UFC, but, you know, he does a good job of putting his fighters first, and that's what you want to see from the promoter. Whereas with Dana, it's always the Dana show. And, you know, Dana's never been afraid of getting involved in any controversy, talking about Joe Biden because he wanted Trump to win the election, you know, and being really selective when he wants to talk about when black athletes should talk and shouldn't, whether it was Tyron Woodley or anyone else. Or he's always the less marketable athletes and the black athletes that speak out about how they're feeling. We've seen that so many times. So, I mean, you know, let's take that out and let's just talk about what's going to be a really great fight. Like, Weili Zhang, amazing. Rose Namajunas, amazing. I'm going to be a bit more controversial because I think the guys kind of, you know, went for the slightly, you know, favorite choice. And I'm going to say Zhang by knockout.
Yes, I love it.
You know what? I love Weili Zhang. I think she's really powerful. I think that Rose has shown that she's hittable. Zhang is hittable to a degree, but she's got a serious chin on her. I mean, she took everything that the kitchen sink at her and was still there standing, didn't get knocked down, wasn't really phased, and kept moving forward. And I really think that initially, Rose will get some success because she's going to be the quicker fighter, more technical. But as the fight goes on and the damage wears on her, she's going to start feeling that pressure. And it ain't going to be little mini Hulk trying to pick her up and suplex her on the floor. It's going to be Zhang putting a fist through her face and then raising the China flag right above her body and saying, champ and still. So that's it.
I love it. I love it. And like you say, Zhang is very quick, and she's, as Prath said earlier, she's a bit of a brawler as well. When she comes in with these kind of 4, 5, 6, 7 combinations, comes out with a leg kick on the way out. She's very, very good at piecing up her, you know, big combos all the way through. But I think, exactly like you said, I think Rose is going to get caught by one of those, whether it be the 4th, 5th, or the 6th shot on the way through. I think she will get caught by something, and perhaps a TKO.
I think if you saw you know, with when Zhang won the belt, how dangerous she looked in the pocket against that brawler. And if she can do that to Andrade, who's a beast, imagine Rose in the pocket with her. It's not going to be pretty. So I'm sorry, guys. You know, I know you're a big fan of how wonderful she looks, but she's going to be looking pretty ugly by the end of that night. It's going to be like JJ's big alien head ×2, man.
Joanna's dome piece. Yeah, it was full head. Oh, no one wants to see that happen to Rose Namajunas, especially not Pat Berry. He won't be able to look at her for a month.
Hype or die, man. Shout out hype or die.
You know, I think this is going to be a close fight as well. I am going to go with Zhang because I think she is a fantastic fighter, and we can go 2-2 here, and we can have a breakdown on Sunday, and hopefully we can talk about all the wonderful things that both of these ladies had to offer that fight. Now, on the main event of the evening, we have a rematch that nobody wanted. Because we saw nothing in the first one. We saw nothing to make us go, oh, I really want them two guys to fight again. And I want Usman to just hold him up against the side. And it was very flat. It was very flat from a fighter that was very, very up and coming. Since Jorge Masvidal knocked out Darren Till, I feel it was, you know, with that beautiful kind of left hook, completely slept him. He was asleep for a good 5 or 7 minutes. I feel like no one in the UK really knew who Jorge Masvidal was, apart from in his backyard brawls with Kimbo Slice, obviously. And he's got a huge record of 35-14, been on the losing end to a lot of split decisions. A couple of years ago, apparently he went to the forest and decided he wanted to come back and he wanted to start winning. And he's been very, very much in the public eye since, and doing a lot of controversial things as well with regards to supporting Trump. For what? I don't know. You know, it was very, very strange that he jumped on that bandwagon, as well as Colby Covington jumping on that bandwagon. They were obviously friends and now they're not. I don't know about you guys, but I didn't want to see this fight again. I had no interest in seeing this again because it wasn't competitive the first time. And I feel Usman is such a good fighter and such a well-rounded fighter. The way he finished Gilbert Burns was just beautiful. It was poetry in motion. And you know, knocking him down over and over again with the jab as well was just glorious. George, I know you're a big Kamaru fan, and you're obviously going to go with a Nigerian nightmare for this weekend. So do you think it's going to be competitive, or do you think that it's going to go very much the same way as the first fight did?
I don't think it's going to go the same way the first fight did, because I think Kamaru Usman at the moment, for the first time, seems to have a few fans because of how he performed against Gilbert Burns.
Yeah.
And I do think there's a narrative that a 25-minute snooze fest would push him back where perhaps he doesn't really want to have to go back to in terms of his popularity. You know, we're talking at the moment about a guy who might be the pound-for-pound number one. He's in that conversation. And I don't know whether he really wants to, you know, put on a show where it is like being back at Fight Island. So I'm actually thinking that he might stand there and trade with Masvidal at times. I do think he'll lean wrestle heavy because obviously that's the bread and butter for Usman, and it is a tactic that will help him against Masvidal. You know, you can't not use it. That would be stupid. But I do think it'll be more entertaining. I don't think he can afford to just stand there and just do what he did, the foot stomping, all this kind of stuff. For Masvidal, it's interesting though, because, you know, okay, he lost and he did lose convincingly, but obviously it was on 6 days. You know, what can Masvidal do with a full training camp on 6 weeks? You know, that's the serious question. I don't see him winning. He's going to have to be literally perfect all night long to win it. And I don't know how someone can be absolutely 100% perfect against Kamaru Usman. I'm just not sure that's possible. I do think it's much, much, much more different to the first one. I do think it'll be a slightly more. I do think at times Masvidal will find success and he will trade with him, but you know, I don't. I full would pick Masvidal to win this. It will be and still. It's just this. It will be.
Yeah, I'm with you. Now, people always say about, you know, Usman being a bit of a snoozeman, this kind of stuff, but he's got a lot of TKO wins on his record. He's got a lot of very, very good fights on his record, and he's got a very, very good streak in this division as well. How do you see it playing out? And do you think that Masvidal is going to change anything coming into this? Because obviously he couldn't implement anything before because he's getting his toes destroyed and he was obviously being held up against the side of the cage. Do you think he's going to maybe add on a bit more bulk and then cut down a bit more water to try and, you know, have a bit more stature in that kind of wrestle heavy routine that Usman's going to put on? But how do you see it playing out from a Masvidal point of view?
Oh, man, I wrote pages and pages of notes. No, I didn't. Kamaru Usman by Russell Fuck. Next. I mean, like, okay, well, I will say that Masvidal, with a little bit more of a training camp, I think for a cardio sake, that might be the difference there. I felt like, you know, in the first fight, he was kind of gassed out after maybe like the first round or so. And Masvidal's always had really good cardio, hence why he goes to a lot of split decisions, because, you know, he's able to push the pace and it be a very, very close fight. So I do think that will make a little bit of a difference. But, you know, for me, Kamaru Usman is the cardio machine of freaks. Him and Colby Covington are like the top at that particular style of fighting, which is, you know, the over cardio takedowns, like make you work like crazy. Like that's Kamaru Usman's game. And that's like, I just don't see George being able to defend like high volumes of takedowns over and over and over again. which is kind of what Kamaru does. And I do believe he's going to mix in the striking, you know, having a lot of success against Gilbert Burns and being able to outstrike him, I think is obviously, you know, going to really pump up his confidence. And so when he goes in there, he's going to feel himself a little bit more. He's going to strike with him a little bit more. But I do think, and I will say, and I think most of us can agree here that George Masvidal will have the upper hand when it comes to striking alone. If it was just striking back and forth, I think George has got great body kicks, head kicks. You know, he throws the body kick like a whip, man. If you watch the Nate Diaz fight, I think that's like my best example of his body kicks. I think he was able to hurt Nate over and over again just with that one technique alone. And, you know, slept Darren Till with that leaping left hand. Like, he's got great weapons in his back pocket. And, you know, George is unpredictable. And I think, you know, the Ben Askren fight would definitely show you that he is capable of coming up with just a weird ass plan and just like letting something go for the sake of letting it go to just see what happens. You know, you watch a lot of guys do it and it end up kind of flopping, but, you know, I think George has the technique to be able to pull off a lot of these, you know, like a crazy flying knee if it came to it kind of thing. So, I think it will be a little bit more competitive, especially in those early rounds in terms of striking. I feel like Kamaru is going to really like use the first round or so to just see how he can hang with Masvidal. I think once he can see like maybe he can get his couple of strikes in and things like that, I think, you know, Masvidal will start touching him up, and I think then Kamaru will start shooting for everything and his mother.
Fair enough. But correct me if I'm wrong, right? Masvidal's last couple of opponents were Ben Askren, Usman, obviously, that he lost to. Ben Askren was the freak KO, Darren Till, and who else was it? Was there anyone else, or is that it?
Nate Diaz.
Nate Diaz, which wasn't really a fight. It was just kind of, but, you know, Nate Diaz on the back end of his career, and he's kind of like a prize fighter almost, right?
Connor hates Nate Diaz. Connor hates Nate Diaz.
I like him, but, you know, let's move on now. He's that changing in the guard. Let's get out with the old era stuff, you know. Him, Chris Weidman, they can both leave. Darren Till was cutting too much weight to get to that division anyway. He lost to Usman. Yeah. Ben Askren was a freak knockout that happens once every 100 years. If when he comes up against top 5, top 4 competitors, Wonderboy's beating him, you know, and he's been beaten by everyone that he's come up against in that kind of top 5 or 6 in the division. Prash, where do you see Masvidal going after this? He's 36. He's made a good amount of money with his endorsements and with, you know, teaching Jake Paul how to do some random 1-2 step in hook, crazy, stupid stuff. And he's, you know, got his Gucci mink or whatever. But do you see Masvidal making a run for the belt here if he does get a win at the weekend? I personally don't think he will, but what's your opinion on it?
Hell no. Look, I am old enough, much older than you guys, to have remembered the time when on LimeWire, I don't know if you even know what that is. I was downloading pirated Backstreet Bulls, Kimbo Slice's backyard fights, and I had them downloaded onto my Nokia that just had video for the first time, and used to have I think they called him the crazy Latino or something, fighting in the background, and that was Jorge Masvidal. So I've seen him from the early days. I actually didn't even realize it was him when I saw him fighting in UFC, and then when it all added up and they started doing promos related to it, I was like, hold on a second, I've been watching this guy for years. And my feeling on Jorge Masvidal is that he's basically a Nate Diaz, but just slightly more fresh. So he's going to lose this, that's for sure, because this is the Usman era, 100%, there's no doubt. We're seeing Usman in the absolute prime. I don't think anyone beats him at the moment. You know, I love Rocky, but like, even if Rocky gets past Nate Diaz and by some miracle he loses, that would be a disgrace. But when he wins that, he will lose to Usman, because Usman is an even more improved version of since the last time that they fought. And then who else? I mean, Wonderboy's tricky or whatever, but look, Usman will beat him too. He's just that might be a boring fight or a stalemate, but he'd beat him too. So then who else is left? This is Usman's time right now. But Masvidal, he'll lose this. He'll probably have 1 to 2 more money fights. I mean, look, Nate Diaz rematch is always there. Conor might, you know, just for the hell of it, say, hey, why not, you know, name versus a name. Colby's always going to be there. The end, and Leon Rocky Edwards, because of the beef before. So he's got 3 or 4 good fights off the back end, no matter what that he can have before he retires. There can be 4 pretty good paydays. They're all 4, I would say, pay-per-view worthy headline fights. And, you know, then he can go off into the sunset with his tequila and his pink mink, whatever you call it, bathrobe, and that's it. And that's enough from him. Oh, and maybe one celebrity boxing fight. That's almost guaranteed. Let's be honest. He could definitely take that.
He's going to be fighting Oscar. Watch.
Oh, can you imagine?
George. George, man, you're lucky you didn't
jump. That's a real possibility.
We're lucky that George didn't dump on this chat with Brian, man. George would have been absolutely throwing up at our Jake Paul versus Ben Askren conversation.
Yeah,
I know how much you love both.
I fucking hate that guy.
So we're all going for the Nigerian Nightmare to win at the weekend and to extend his winning streak and extend his legacy. And, you know, I really, really do, from the bottom of my heart, want it to be competitive, but I can only agree with you three fantastic gentlemen that Kamaru Usman will win this fight. But do you think he's going to get a stoppage, or do you think it's going to go to a decision? Because we'll go around the room, because Jorge Masvidal has a chin of granite. Prash, as you said, you used to see him in the backyard brawling. I remember I had LimeWire, I had the same Nokia, man. We watched the same fights. He had this long hair and it was flowing all over the place, Clay Guida style. And he had a chin of absolute stone, you know, it was solid. And he was fighting guys that were 60, 70 pounds heavier than him, you know, and his shorts kept pulling him up all the time and swinging about, no technique at all. He was just an absolute beast. But George, do you think Jorge Masvidal gets knocked out of the weekend after what we've seen Usman do to Gilbert Burns?
Well, you used the words out of my mouth. I would have said no before I saw the Gilbert Burns fight, but no, I don't think he does. I think this does go to the decision, so I'll go for Usman decision.
Nice. Prath, tell me.
Yeah, decision, but it's going to be, again, I think it's going to be a tougher fight. I think it's going to be even a tougher fight for Usman, with Masvidal being able to prepare a little bit more technique wise and, be able to like look at the tape of Usman. I know he's very much he like looks at a lot of tape and studies it and things like that. So I think he's going to be able to have a little bit more of a defense against him, but yeah, Usman by decision.
Prash, same question, man.
Well, look, I think he'll, like the guy said, I think he'll have a lot more success in the first couple of rounds. I think that we'll see him probably, take advantage in the striking exchanges. I think he'll look a little bit better in the pocket, but I still kind of feel that Usman has just kind of grown further and further into his kind of championship status and winning mentality. And even if Jorge is able to clip him early, I don't think he'll be able to put him away, because Burns, I think, is a more powerful striker. Maybe not as technical, but definitely more powerful than Jorge. So I think that, he may get clipped, but his championship mentality will keep him through, and you'll just see him edge further and further away, and it will be a decision. If he finishes him, it will just move him to another level. But I just don't really see it happening. Like, Jorge is really, really tough, really durable. And unless he can wears him out and does a submission in the late sort of fourth or fifth, I can just see a decision, really.
The other thing I was going to say just lastly on this was if you're looking for something to give Masvidal any chance of winning, which I don't think he will, this is in front of a full crowd, literally just up the road from Miami. This will be a bear pit for Kamaru Usman. This will be at least 90% in favor of Masvidal, the crowd. So, we've seen him handle it with the Covington fight. So it's not, I don't expect it to be a problem, but it will be a Masvidal heavy fan base on Saturday night.
Can I just say as well that, I think I agree with you, but when Usman fought Covington, it was kind of disgusting, but they were like, USA, as though he wasn't from the USA as well. And Usman came through that and broke his jaw, and they were screaming and clapping for him. And I can see the exact same thing happening here.
Yeah.
No, I don't disagree with you completely. 100%. I don't disagree. I think he's able to put himself into that kind of headspace where he's able just to concentrate fully on what's in front of him.
Yeah, and I believe he used to train out of Florida, now he's moved to Denver, but, he was training in Florida with Henry Hoof's team in Sanford, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. But, Masvidal's the Miami kid, isn't he? He's just, he's just, that when you think about it, that crowd literally an hour up the road will literally be all Masvidal, probably.
Usman's going to have his dad with him as well, by the way. So, I mean, that's a motivation in itself. First time his dad's going to attend a fight with him. So, I mean, that's, more than enough for him to not worry about the crowd booing him. And I think he'll be totally up for it.
Totally. And then Nganou's going to corner him as well.
Is he?
Okay.
There you go. See,
That'd
George,
be
you've got a
amazing.
man on the inside. He knows these things.
Do you know that? How the fuck do you know that, mate?
He said it after he won the world title, Ngannou. He said, in a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to corner Usman.
Because Usman cornered him.
Nah, there's no way Ngannou's cornering him. Nah, he's not. What's he going to tell him to do?
What is he going to tell him?
Do that.
But he's not going to tell him to do anything.
You got to slip the jab. What is he going to tell him?
stand
What is he
there
going to tell him?
He's not going to tell him anything. He's not got any more knowledge than Trevor Whitman does. So he's just going to stand there and go, "This is fantastic. We're in this together because of Africa together."
To be fair, Kamaru Usman just needs Trevor Whitman. He is that damn good.
Well, yeah, Trevor Whitman, by the way, if Rose becomes world champion on Saturday and Kamaru Usman retains, Trevor Whitman's coach of the year.
Coach of the year, yeah.
For sure.
Not for the first time.
Not for the first time.
No. But he's still working on Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje's still falling ever so slightly short, isn't he? So, you know, Trevor
Against
Whitman's still
Khabib,
got a
the
little bit more work
greatest.
to do.
Yeah. Oh, no, yeah.
Can't bring him down to earth, you know. He can't be the best at everything. But to wrap it up, I'm really looking forward to the fights this weekend. Super, super excited. It's been fantastic talking to all of you about them. Prash, thank you so much for jumping on the channel as well. It's been beautiful to have your insight as well on the channel with us. And I believe you're going to do the breakdown afterwards as well, right?
Love to, yeah, absolutely.
You're more than welcome. You are more than welcome. George, thank you as always. Casual Corner, the people's champ over there. The Eloquent Analyst 2.0, thank you very much as always. And if you are not subscribed to the channel, hit subscribe, hit like. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and all of those amazing things, thank you so much. Tell everyone you know, and we will be back next week for the breakdown of this fight. And we also have merch as well. I'll put the link in the description below. Sorry, I'm still getting used to it. And yeah, thank you so much for joining in, and we'll see everyone next time. Thank you very much.